Ring out wild bells to the wild sky. Ring out the old, ring in the new. Ring happy bells across the snow. The year is going, let 'em go. Ring out the false, ring in the true. Alfred Lord Tennyson. Please join me as I ring our Tibetan bowl as a call to service, listening as the sound fills the sanctuary and then recedes back into the silence. This is the time to open our hearts and our minds to receive the gift that we bring to each other. Well, good morning. Good morning and welcome, members and friends and visitors, both in the sanctuary and at home on Zoom or Zoom, wherever you may be, to the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River, a church that is special in our lives, active in the world, and grounded in love and justice. Love is the power that holds us together as a beloved community. As we enter into worship on this final Sunday of the year 2024, let us open our hearts to the healing power of liberating love. To the young and the old, the innocent and the jaded, the fresh of mind and the deeply steeped, whatever your faith tradition, let us come together into a calm, clear place where we can relinquish our clutter and relax from busyness into being, where we can breathe in peace and center ourselves in love. My name is Annie Lavin, and I am pleased to be your service leader this morning. Today, we welcome back to our pulpit our longtime friend, Reverend Greg Shute, and we're fortunate to have his lovely wife, Mary, with us. They're driven over from Dover. Greg's talk this morning is titled, Counting My Blessings. Greg reminds us in this time between having completed our wish list for Christmas and ruminating on the resolutions for the new year, we might take a moment to reflect on our blessings, those we celebrate every day, those we too often overlook and take for granted, and all those in between. And so this morning we'll be listening to readings and blessings and more that will keep us centered into the present, that place full of wonder and grace where we should spend far more time and see what's there to discover. We look forward to Greg's talk. Gratitude to our musician and accompanist, Michael Casey, and to the tech team, and to all of those who aided in making this service a reality. We thank you. Your names are in the order of service. We have one announcement this morning. The UUCR Members and Friends Directory needs updating. We are asking again to provide us with pictures and current contact information. You can upload pictures from your phone to the UUCR webpage. Click on the directory button right next to the donate button or see David Beeler or John Ramsey. If we don't get current information, we'll be calling you, and don't let that happen, says John. So there you go. And if the phones are silenced, we can begin. We'll now begin with the chalice lighting, and Greg will lead us with that. The words are in your order of service as I light the chalice. He will lead with the words.
Please join in unison. As we light this chalice on the cusp of a brand new year, we remember that we are suspended between all that was and all that might be. We struggle to live this present moment, each precious moment, with mindfulness. Let us sit quietly together and savor this moment. Let us relish this between time, where past meets future. Let us harbor a faith that reminds us that right now, right here, is enough. Let us join in hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
Please stand as you are able. That is our life. Sing this hymn of praise. For needs which others serve, for services we do, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must hear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all that is our gift, which we are called common good, and make our own days glad. A young writer who died way before his time in his early 30s from ALS. He wrote a book entitled Learning to Fall, a very slim book, which I discovered many years ago, right after his death. Philip Simmons was his name, is his name, as I speak it whenever I can, because his message is forever meaningful, and he reminds us that we are all standing on an edge, and the present moment is that edge. And he asks, can you feel it? Can you become familiar with it and recognize it? Be comfortable with it. Dwell within it. It's that sliver of time between past and future. We're called away from it continually by our earthly pleasures and concerns. Even now, you may be thinking it's time for another cup of coffee, or maybe wondering what pastry is waiting for you in the next room, or did you remember to feed the cat back at the house? Seems it's always time to be doing something other than what you're doing at this moment. But come on back and stay with me for a minute. The present moment, like the spotted owl or the sea turtle, has sadly become an endangered species. Yet more and more, I find that dwelling in the present moment, in the face of everything that would call me out of it, it's a discipline. It's a spiritual discipline, you might call it, and it has its own rewards. It requires no special powers, only imagination, appreciation, a doting and practical attention to the ordinary. And when I say ordinary, it's quite a nice ordinary, a familiar one. It should be. It's your own creation. It's moments of your life. You're slowing down, appreciating, and living fully your precious moments. And so today's service will be returning time and again to the present, as we said in the chalice lighting. Not to be distracted by ruminations of the past, looking in that rear view mirror, or thoughts and worries about the future, which we're not even certain we'll have, but centering on the here and the now, where the mind is clear and receptive and creativity lies. The new year beckons, and the temptation is to be planning for it. But maybe, not just yet, let's slow it down a bit. Let's slow the pace and gently hold and enjoy this time between past and future, as the Buddhists call it, the middle path, and savor the remaining time together, the now. And now Connie has a reading.
Good morning. You all have in your little folder there, The Moment of Magic by Reverend Victoria Safford. I'll read the dark and you read the light print. Now is the moment of magic, when the whole round earth turns again toward the sun. Here's a blessing. The days will be longer and brighter now, even before the winter sets. Now is the moment of magic, when people beaten down and broken with nothing left but misery and candles and their own clear voices kindle tiny lights and whisper secret music. And here's a blessing. The dark universe is suddenly illuminated by the lights of the menorah, suddenly ablaze with the lights of the Kinara, and the whole world is quiet and loud with winter singing. Now is the moment of magic, when an eastern star beckons the ignorant toward an unknown goal. And here's a blessing. They find nothing in the end but an ordinary baby born at midnight, born in poverty, and the baby's cry, like bells ringing, makes people wonder as they wander through their lives what human love really look like, sound like, feel like, sound like, feel like. Now is the moment of magic. And here's a blessing. We already possess all the gifts we need, already received our presents, ears to hear music, eyes to behold lights, hands to build true peace on earth, and to hold each other tight in love. And now we'll have the acknowledgements of the heart. Anyone who has a joy or a sorrow or a thought to share with us. Please let me know and I will come to you.
This is for Mimi Roeder Vaughn, a dear classmate, a stellar woman, so excellent. And this was unexpected. Well, she did have congenital heart disease, which doesn't go away, but she died Christmas Day, leaving 3 children who are devastated. Well, they're in their 50s, they're older children. She's been my friend for over 60 years now, but anyway, she was hospitalized, and they realized she wasn't going to make it, and her whole family was with her. Her mother, who's 97, is the last mother of our classmates, still living, and she's sharp and in good health. And this is her third out of 4 children she's bearing. Anyway, for Mimi, she was wonderful.
Well, I have a joy to share. I met up with my friend of over 50 years, day before yesterday. Oops, we had lunch and we talked and talked and talked and talked. And it was wonderful to see her. She lives in North Carolina, so I don't see her very often, but it was a joy to see her.
Margot and I were standing in line to see the Impressionism show at the National Gallery 2 days ago, and we got a phone call, and our beloved brother-in-law, Bill Bryan, died that morning, and he was one of the good ones. He was only 65, and so the whole family, sometimes people die and you don't miss them. This is one everyone will really miss, which in a way is its own blessing. So.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped pull together the outdoor winter solstice thing that we did last week. It was wonderful, and it was wonderful to feel supported, like the people who came out and helped clean up the space and get rid of the leaves with Diane, and this, getting the fire going and getting all the things coordinated. It was a lot of learning curve for me because I didn't know a lot of the things that needed to be done, but it was wonderful, and it really filled my heart to be outside. So thank you very much.
I should do one for my beautiful grandsons who just left me. Their fingerprints are still all over my house, and it makes me laugh because they're big. It was just incredible. I mean, I just am still overwhelmed by it all because, they were coming there, and now all of a sudden, like, they're great big huge people, and they hold the door for me and they treat me like a little person. I've always been the big tall person, and they're, come Grand Annie, do this, and so they're doing a stays with me. So if I'm a little flummoxed this morning, you'll know why. And does anyone else have an opportunity to come on up and light a candle? Okay. I expect you for the offering. We'll have the offering. We are grateful for your goodness and the way you show it in so many ways to our community. And now Greg is going to do a responsive reading.
I would like to invite you to turn in the back of your hymnal to number 512, and we're going to read this responsively. And I know it's a very familiar one that you probably did at Thanksgiving, but we're going to do it a little differently in that you're going to read the regular type and I'm going to read the italicized part. So you get to start. We give thanks this day. 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 We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Is this working? Yeah, it is. This is working, yes. I wanted to do that because as I was considering this notion of talking about counting my blessings, I realized that I often at least confuse the idea of being grateful for the many gifts and joys that I have in my world and truly blessings. So I was struggling with the distinction between those two things. And I kind of thought that it would be good to get that list sort of out of the way, because certainly I'm grateful for all those things, as are many of us. But I want us to think a little deeper than that litany of things that we often list. So I did a little research. I went online and I found a delightful book that by Robert Bly called Counting My Blessings. And I had great expectations of it, but I was terribly disappointed. So I don't recommend it. Because he made that same mistake, which sort of emphasized the distinction for me. He opens up by talking a lot about his mother teaching him about the worldview of a glass half empty or a glass half full. And he goes on and on about that and sort of trying to make the point that we can see the world in two different ways. And he almost suggests that we can choose whether we see it one way or the other, but I'm not sure that that's true. I think that we are a product of our environment and our upbringing in a lot of ways, which influence whether we see that glass as half full or half empty. But for me, it emphasized the fact that, that glass is not half full or half empty. It's both half full and half empty. And that's a thought that I've been having actually for many years in ministry, that we tend to see the world in an either or. And it's much more realistic to have a context of a both and, because it is a world of both and. So I kind of was disappointed in that. And then he went on to list 63 blessings. I couldn't come up with that many. But he listed 63 blessings. And I have the book in here somewheres. And he starts out with the first thing that he counts as his blessing is air conditioning. Now, I agree that especially in Maryland and Delaware, coming from New England, I never had air conditioning, but here it is essential, so it is certainly high on the list. But air conditioning and books and CDs and color, and I love this one, compound interest. Democracy, dogs, it doesn't list cats, electricity, family, freedom, et cetera, all the way down through music and Alka-Seltzer and sleep and umbrellas, et cetera, et cetera. And I kind of get that, but it's also kind of superfluous. It's kind of on the surface. I think that for me, the idea of blessings is deeper than that. Blessings are the things that change my life and that change me. But the one thing he did do in here was he did manage to quote Paul McElroy from a short meditation book called Quiet Thoughts. And McElroy writes, "Sorrow and joy are yoked together, not for contrast, but because they are different expressions of the same physiological condition. It is a fallacy to assume that sorrow implies evil and that joy represents happiness. For even in laughter, the heart is sad, and the end of joy is heaviness." Legend tells of the woman who came to the river Styx to be ferried across to the land of departed spirits. Kairos, the ferryman, offers her a certain potion which can cause her to forget the life she is leaving and all of its sorrows. In the end, the woman leaves the draught untasted, choosing to remember life's pains and sorrows and failures, rather than to forget its joys, its triumphs, and its loves. Sorrow and joy belong together. They are precious experiences which deepen our understanding and give meaning to our lives. That's what I'm talking about, the dichotomy of life. This reality that life isn't either or, it's not half full or half empty. It's both at the same time. It's full of both joy and sorrow and everything in between. And I loved your opening words about living on the edge. And that's where blessings live, on that edge, that moment, this moment, and many of those moments in our lives when we've been right on that brink of something new and different, something that is going to have such an impact on our lives that we become someone new and we see the world in a new way. That moment, with all of its fear and trembling, is a blessing. That moment, to fully be in that moment, accept it, acknowledge it, move through it, embrace it, and become someone new. That's a blessing, not air conditioning or books or any of those other lists on Robert Bly's list. And not even the things that we read in that litany. Those are beautiful things, beautiful times, beautiful experiences, beautiful things to share. But I'm talking about a blessing being something that has such a profound impact on us that our life and the world we live in will never be the same. So I was thinking about my blessings, and I'm going to count my blessings. So I have 3 that immediately came to mind. And unfortunately, I've been here so many times, you already know all 3 of them. But I'm going to recover them again for you anyways, because I'm going to ask you to think of them in terms of them being a blessing with such an impact that they change. You all know that my parents moved from Massachusetts to Michigan in 1966. In September of 1966, 3 days before my senior year in high school. And a lot of people think, oh, that must have been tough. But I embraced it. I loved it. It was great because I had the opportunity to totally reinvent myself. I remember being in the house we moved into and sitting there and thinking, so what is this going to be like? What am I going to do? How am I going to embrace this and become something new? And I love this. I looked out the window and there was this woman walking down the street with her dog, walking her dog. And 52 years later, she's sitting right there. I decided I'm not going to sit back and just sulk. I'm going to go and talk to that beautiful young woman and impress her with what a wonderful person I am. And it sort of worked. But we were friends for 7 years before we got married. It was the most important thing, the most important person in my life, and remains to be the important person in my life. But what I'm talking about is embracing that opportunity to explore something different, to embrace that adventure, to go out there and to say, you know, I'm not going to be who I was necessarily, but I'm going to step into the mystery and see what can come from this. The second blessing that comes to mind that really I had no idea it was a blessing was in June of 1997, we went whitewater rafting with the parish on the Deerfield River in western Massachusetts. And it turns out later we found out that the corner of the rubber raft that I was sitting on had a slow leak in it. So that when we went over the falls, it acted like an elastic rubber band and actually shot me out of the air, several feet into the air. And I spent a certain amount of time underwater. And they had told you, you know, if you do get out of the boat, just put your feet downstream and just drift along. Had, you know, a helmet and jacket on. And I remember being underwater and seeing all those smooth stones on the bottom of the creek, and they really do have those down there. And thinking, okay, so which way is downriver? And thinking, you know, I had no idea that my life would end today. And there was no fear in that, but there was this sort of curiosity that, you know, I hadn't expected this. And here we are, and I don't know if I'm going to pop up again. And I did wind up popping up, as you can tell, a couple of 100 yards down. And one of the other boats, Frank and Tony, a couple of people in the parish, hauled me out of the water into the bottom of their raft. And I was laying there, and they're both leaning over, going, "How are you? Are you okay? Are you okay?" Or, you know. And I was looking up at that beautiful blue sky. It's just glorious. And I thought, I don't know. And that's not what they wanted to hear. But that moment I will always remember. And I remember saying that because at that moment, I wasn't sure what had just happened. Something had happened, but it was unclear what that was. And I can now look back at that and recognize that that moment, that experience was a blessing, because ever since, every day I wake up and recognize that this is one more day that I almost didn't have, and that I need to pay attention to this day. Each and every day is a gift that unearned, undeserved, but given freely. But the blessing is that moment of understanding that. That's the blessing. And the third one that immediately comes to mind is that in September of 2001, shortly after 9/11, I was at seminary working on my doctorate, and I was invited to go on a seminar to South Africa to study the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And the consequences, the results of that effort, led by Desmond Tutu and certainly practiced by Nelson Mandela. And I stayed with a family in Soweto for a week, and we visited with a lot of civic leaders and political leaders and church leaders. And I stayed with a family of this taxi dispatcher in Soweto. And then I stayed for a week with a Hindu doctor in Chatsworth, which is a suburb, an Indian suburb of Durban. And then I stayed with a minister in Guguletu, which is outside of Cape Town. And I got to understand this notion of truth and reconciliation in a deeper way than just a philosophical exercise. We were tasked with asking everyone we met how that changed their lives and how they became different because of, rather than seeking vengeance and retribution for all of the atrocities for so many years, instead to seek for restorative justice. And that's a delightful two words that Desmond Tutu writes about in his book, No Future Without Forgiveness. Restorative justice. Rather than seeking punitive justice, vengeance, retribution, restorative justice, about reconnecting the relationship that we have with others, with other people in our country, with other people in the world. Reconnecting in a healthy, realistic sort of a way, rather than in a superior or in a hateful sort of a way. Restorative justice. So I offer that as two words for you to consider and contemplate in your future. Restorative justice. How do I find restorative justice? How do I restore healthy relations? So those are the three initial blessings that came to my mind, not because of what the conveniences of electricity or conveniences or the pleasure of all of the many gifts in my life, but because those moments, those are those edge pieces where the past is in the past and the future is yet to be explored, but I have that initial tiny moment when I can either embrace it and move forward into something totally new. So blessings come sort of as a surprise, in other words. I don't know they're coming. All of a sudden they're there. All of a sudden this woman is walking down the street. All of a sudden I have a chance to go to South Africa. All of a sudden I find myself at the bottom of a river. And then what do I do with those moments? Because those are the moments that give me opportunity for so much in my life. So what I would like to do is to actually take a moment of silence here, very quietly, and for each and every one of us to stop and think about the blessings we have experienced in our lives. And by that, I don't mean the luxuries of our life, but sometimes the sad moments in our lives are the blessings as well. Sometimes the joyful moments are the blessings. But the blessings are those moments that come when everything is different. So I'd like to ask you to count your blessings with a deeper respect and appreciation, a deeper acceptance, a deeper appreciation. So I'm wondering if anyone has anything they'd like to share. I have it. I have it.
I am very thankful
for ending up in Chestertown, Maryland. And it was just a fluke. It was just a fluke. And it just couldn't have been better. Wonderful.
I too am grateful to be here in Kent County. I was in a town, Annapolis, that was growing, and I'm fond of smaller population and a lot less traffic. And I was looking for rural, and one friend suggested Kent County, which I hate to say I'd never heard of. But so I moved here knowing no one. Big change, and boy, do I love so much about here, especially right now. There's a pond across the street from me, and on one side, and a field on the other, and the geese landing and talking to one another just is a joy. But there's a lot of others joys involved with living here.
I don't want to criticize, but I'm going to ask you not to use the word thanks and not to use the word gratitude, because I'm trying to steer us away from that. Those are great, but what if instead we were to think of it as a blessing that you moved here, and a blessing that you moved here? You know, I think of, we moved to Delaware purely by accident as well. And I consider it a blessing because it opened up a whole new world to me. So I agree with your thoughts, but I'm asking you to think, don't think of being it as being grateful or thanks, because that puts it in the same category with so many other things. Your points are well taken, but I'm going to ask you to think of it in a little differently sort of a way. Is that okay? Is that okay? Not sure.
I started my career teaching in the middle school, and I loved that. It was very manageable for me. And at some point here in Queen Anne's County where I was teaching, we had a very big financial crisis in our county. And so a number of us teaching at the middle school level got moved to the high school level, because we were certified in that capacity, even though we hadn't chosen that in the moment. And some of my pals that were moved were really devastated. It was a blessing for me, because it was a change I was really ready for. It was really hard, but I learned so much, and now I teach what I always wanted to teach, and it just blows my heart up all the time. And I get to coach, and if I might not have made that transition on my own, because I would have been chicken, but I wanted to, and it was a blessing that I got forced, so.
I would say that probably the biggest blessing in my life is my sister having a little girl who I became the godmother to, and who has been in my life and just taught me so many, many, many things. And now she has 2 little girls, and watching her mother those little girls is just, it's amazing. She is amazing.
13 years ago, I was going through a divorce, which turns out to be an enormous blessing for me. I didn't feel like it at the time, but after 30 years in a dysfunctional relationship, which can really twist your heart and your mind into an unrecognizable pretzel, to be relieved of that and be able to come back into a better part of myself turned out to be a terrific blessing. And I'm very grateful for the life I have now. And part of it was during this process that needing to reach out to a different group of people, I tagged along with Margot to a UU event and found a very caring and loving group of people whom I admire greatly. And so that's how I came upon a blessing 13 years ago.
Well, thanks. That's a great example because it's a sad, sorrow of loss, certainly loss of idea of what the future was going to be like and didn't work out for you anyways. But beautiful that it's a blessing in disguise, comes along as a surprise and opens up a whole new world for you. Thanks.
Well, as many of you know, I have 2 adopted children. My son is from an orphanage in Russia, and he was 3, and my daughter is from an orphanage in Romania, and she was 2. And at the time, I just had all sorts of expectations and hopes, and most unrealistic, because each of them came with many, many problems and still have problems. It's been a blessing. I've learned so much from trying to raise them and having a relationship, and it's just been the biggest blessing in my life.
My biggest blessing right now is that I have a handicap parking ticket. And it happened a few years ago when I have rheumatoid arthritis, which is luckily dormant now. But then the doctor gave me the handicap. And today in my old age, it's a real blessing. And I almost envy other people because I'm a foreigner, And I see all these white, nice people and they have to park somewhere else. So that's a true blessing. And the second blessing is, many years ago I walked in a tire store, Pep Boys. And I met my future wife, which is sitting right here with me. And she gave me 3 stepchildren, of course, they were there at the time, as well as my own child, who doesn't talk to me now. But I have a very good relationship with all these stepchildren. That's my true blessing. So here is my wife.
So I wanted to say 2 things. One, his sermon is beautifully represented in the movie Inside Out. It's like a Disney Pixar film, and it is so beautifully represents how joy and sorrow mix together to create the gift. And it was one of those like epiphany moments for me where I saw it for like 20 minutes. So it's a good movie. The second thing I want to say is that I almost drowned myself on a river doing a kayaking tour in Whitewater, and I went to bed that night knowing how close I had been because I was rescued by somebody as I was about to take off my flotation device because I couldn't think clearly. And that morning, the dream, you know how sometimes when you wake up, that dream right as you wake up is a really powerful one? So in my dream, right before I woke up, I'm at a barbecue and there's a bunch of people I don't recognize, and maybe it was you guys, who are celebrating, right? And there's a table full of food. And over the table is a banner that says, "Yay, she didn't exit." And it was my sign, my gift that I'm not alone, and that even if we do die, there's a team there cheering for us, helping us, and I'll never forget that.
This is Kevin speaking here. One of the blessings that I had very important was when I entered the Marine Corps, and let me tell you why. When I was in grammar school and also in high school, I couldn't talk in class. I was just afraid of talking. You know, I just would tremble. The teacher in the class would at grammar school, she called on me and I would put my head down and sometimes stick my tongue out, no, just. Anyway, it was like that also in my first time in college, at least the first year. And I wasn't applying myself, and I said, I should do something else. So I decided that I would go join the Marines, and I did. And I was in a group of 90 Marines in the barracks that I lived in, and we all came in about the same time. And the drill instructor, there were 4 of them, and they harassed us and harassed me too, and I think more than the others, okay. And I said to myself, I can deal with the harassment because I was in very good physical shape. And then a few days later, they called me into the office and they said, we're going to appoint you to be the section leader. And I said, what does that mean? That means when one of the 4 drill instructors are not in the barracks, you are in charge and responsible for everything that is done or not done. And I had to talk to people. I even, a few months later, they taught me how do I say this? To parade the men to lunch or supper, so that we would all get outside the barracks, they'd get in line, and I would start counting cadence. I could do it right now, but I'm not going to do it. But that really put me in a place where I could interact with other people, talk with them, and even if the talk was somehow kind of, kind of going nowhere, whether me going nowhere or the person I'm talking to going nowhere. Anyway, that really opened me up to a new way of being.
So joining the Marine Corps, did you ever used to think of that as a blessing?
The way I did, because I wasn't in battle. I was assigned to be a radar technician.
Well, you were lucky. Yeah. Well, but thanks for that, Kim, because that's my point, that I would like to invite everyone to think of blessings in a slightly different, deeper sort of a way, and be able to explore in your life these moments that we often take for granted, that we don't necessarily see, that they're so full of potential, so full of opportunity. And they come along and they surprise us a lot of times. And the challenge is to be aware of them in that moment so that we can fully appreciate and take advantage of that opportunity, and then welcome the change that it makes in our life later. Any other closing comments? Oh, you get the last word.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sally, and my blessing has always been happiness. When I wake up in the morning, I'm happy that I've awakened. And I've had so many happy things happen to me all through my life. It's never been easy. It's never been what I thought it would be, but it turns out to be happiness. Thank you.
Sorry? No, I'll get some more. Well, that's one of the reasons I really like that reflection by McElroy in there, that, when faced with this opportunity to forget all the negative things and embrace only the good things, then we lose all context in which we appreciate our happiness. And I would welcome the sorrows and the pains that come along with my life, along with the joys and the happiness, because without both of those pieces, then you don't really get to experience them. So, now, not to justify the unhappy times or anything, but just to realize that the glass is always both half full and half empty at the same time. Sometimes it's even 3/4 full of something, yeah. Thanks. Any other? Well, that too, yeah, absolutely. If you're really thirsty, yeah. So, I'm done. Closing, well, we have a closing hymn, right? Oh, well, or I have some closing words that I was going to share with you anyways. I'll share them now, and then Annie can finish up. This is from Amanda Gorman's new poem. So you can recite it, right? No. Yeah. May this be the day we come together, mourning to come to mend, withered to come to weather, torn we come to tend, and battered we come to better. Tethered by this year of yearning, we are learning that though we weren't ready for this, we have been readied by it. We steadily vow that no matter how we are weighed down, we must always pave a way forward. This hope is our door, our portal, even if we never get back to normal. Someday we can venture beyond it, to leave the known and take the first steps. Let us not return to what was normal, but reach toward what is next. What was cursed, we will cure. What was plagued, we will prove pure. Where we tend to argue, we will try to agree. Those fortunes we forswore, now the future we foresee. Where we weren't aware, we're now awake. Those moments we missed are now these moments that we make. The moments we meet and our hearts, once all together beaten, now are all together beat. Come, look up with kindness yet, for even solace can be sourced from sorrow. We remember, not just for the sake of yesterday, but to take on tomorrow. We heed this old spirit in a new day's lyric. In our hearts we hear it. For Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne, be bold, sang time this year. Be bold, sang time. For whenever you honor yesterday, tomorrow ye will find. Know what we've fought need not be forgot nor for naught. It defines us, binds us as one. Come over, join this day just begun. For wherever we come together, we will forever overcome.
And now we have our second hymn. It's 331 in the gray hymnal, Life is the Greatest Gift of All.
You want me to play through it before you start it, or?
Sure, that would be great. And then we can stand as we are able, 331. Life is the greatest gift of all. friend sent me these words just the other day, so I thought I would pass them on to you. It's a simple way of praying for the new year. And it was simply this: notice your hands. Are they open? No gripping, no stress, no tension, no fear from keeping a death grip and all those things you can't control. In this moment, I open my hands. I take a breath and let go of the past. Another breath, and I let go of the future. And I rest in love. I surrender and let it all unfold in a spirit of trust. Amen. Blessed be for all of us. And now, together, I'll extinguish the flame. The words are in your order of service. Extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Lifted up, love bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey into peace and the brightness of day. And the postlude.
This is What Are You Doing New Year's Eve?
Okay. So thank you, Michael. And before we leave, let's just gather up the goodness of this hour together, taking in the goodness into our hearts and sending it out into the world for someone who might be in your heart today, and wishing you all a healthy, happy New Year. Join us for coffee.